If you're struggling with OCD, then this video is for you. Hi friends, my name is Claire and this is my channel, Woodshed Theory. Here, I make content about what it is like to live as an adult on the autism spectrum and whatever else feels good to me. So if that sounds good to you, or if you're feeling particularly gracious today, and I hope that you are, go ahead and click the subscribe button. Ring the bell. I almost forgot to mention that I put out videos 3 times a week. Please click the like, it really helps me. I recently asked my subscribers what they'd like to hear more videos on, and OCD came up in many of the comments. I understand the reason because I am a person who is diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, and people do reach out to me or ask me questions on my OCD videos every so often. So I was thinking about what kind of videos would help me if I was struggling with my obsessive compulsive disorder. I'm sorry if I perhaps get emotional during this video, because if you have OCD, you know what a weight it is, and it is emotional. So I'll do my best. Before getting diagnosed several years ago officially with OCD and getting on medication and getting help, things were not great for me. I was really struggling in my day-to-day life, and I didn't see any way out. It's torture. I've said in other videos, it's like living in a prison, and I really do mean that. So I was thinking to myself, what things have I heard through my journey that have really encouraged me and maybe set me free from some wrong ways of thinking about OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and what helped push me forward in my recovery. Now, I still have OCD, I always will. I still struggle with intrusive thoughts almost every day, but my symptoms are so much better, and I just wanted to share these things with you to encourage you so that hopefully one day you can have some relief in your symptoms as well. The first thing that I wanted to tell you is the most important and really hit me like a ton of bricks the first time I heard it from my doctor, and that is, it is not your fault that you have obsessive compulsive disorder. Just want to let that sink in for you a little bit, because I always thought that it was my fault that I had OCD. I had developed it because of something that I did or didn't do, that I made it worse with my actions, that I was having the intrusive thoughts because I was a bad person, and that is just simply not true. OCD is a mental illness that develops over time, and it develops because of the way that your brain is processing thoughts and information, and it's an anxiety disorder. Some people have it and some people don't have it. There's been studies that show that might be a genetic predisposition to developing OCD, but we don't really know exactly why some people get it and why some people don't. But what we do know is that it's not your fault, and it getting worse over time, it's not your fault. It gets worse over time if you don't get help. And you deserve to get help if you want help. The second thing that I was told along my journey that really set me free was that sometimes you can't get better without medication. This was a really big one for me because I grew up in an environment that was medication negative. And I always felt that if I took medication, it meant that I wasn't trying hard enough. And obviously, I should be able to fix myself. If I just worked hard enough, if I just focused hard enough, I could get over what I was going through. At that time, I didn't really know the extent of my illness, but I could get over what I was going through if I just used brute force, if I just focused enough, if I just worked hard enough. And that wasn't the case, and that's okay. And I want people to know that it doesn't make you less of a person. If you had a physical ailment or disease or illness, you would take the medication for it, knowing that your body couldn't heal itself. And medication for OCD, it's not a magic pill, and it doesn't get rid of everything, but it does give you enough of a reprieve of your symptoms for you to put the work in elsewhere. And it's just a tool that I feel a lot of people can benefit from, and I will never forget the moment my doctor told me I wasn't going to get better without medication. It just set me free to start taking it. It wasn't the first time I had sought out medication, but it was the first time that I took it, and I'm so happy that I did. It took a while to get the right medication for me, but I feel like I'm in such a better place now, and I'm so grateful. The third thing that I'd like people to know is that you are not alone. You're just isolated. Many people who have OCD is an anxiety disorder, and the nature of the intrusive thoughts or fears that you might have are very isolating, and that causes you to feel alone and feel like you must be the only person in the world that is going through these symptoms. And it can be very scary to the extent that you wouldn't ask for help or tell anyone about what you're going through because you have fear behind it about what would happen to you. And it's very isolating. A lot of times people who have OCD isolate themselves from other people, and it can make you feel very alone. It took me years to get help because in my mind, I knew that I was the only person going through what I was going through, but that wasn't true. I was just isolated. Finding out that other people also struggled with the exact same thoughts and compulsions that I was struggling with, and in the OCD world, what I was dealing with was fairly quote-unquote normal presentation of OCD. It just made me feel free. It made me feel so much less alone. And I just really want to reiterate to people that you are not alone. OCD is a fairly common mental illness. If you are really suffering and having terrible symptoms, you're not alone. You've just isolated yourself, and you don't have to do that. As long as you're sharing your illness with the right people, you should never have to worry about sharing your illness. Whether that be a trusted family member or a psychiatrist, a doctor, you shouldn't have to worry about it. The fourth thing that I wanted to mention is that there is help out there to relieve your OCD symptoms. As I mentioned, it took me many years to get help. I have had symptoms since I was a child, just textbook OCD, and I suffered for a very long time. I know how difficult it is to ask for help. I remember sitting with a therapist and just trying to explain what my symptoms were and what intrusive thoughts I was having, and I couldn't even speak. My throat closed, I was weeping, crying. It was just awful. It was so difficult for me to even say it out loud to another person. And it was maybe one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But there is help. And I was so shocked and surprised that the doctors I spoke to knew exactly what to do next and what path to put me on. If you aren't ready, there are some resources that you can look into. There's a good book called the OCD Workbook. I will link that down below, as well as some other resources you might want to check out. And the OCD Workbook is great for someone who maybe wants to start working on their symptoms but isn't ready to start speaking out loud about them yet. The fifth thing I wanted to mention is that having OCD, the real OCD, not the, oh my gosh, I'm so clean, or I like things just so, that can be part of the symptoms, but that's not, let's face it, if you suffer from OCD, you know that that's not what it is. So having OCD is really difficult. It's an illness. It is scary. It takes up hours and hours of your day. It is not fun. It is not cute. It's awful. And you're not a weak person if you're not doing well. You're just sick. I wish that somebody was able to encourage me that way when I was really sick. It is the worst. I thought that I was just a weak person because I couldn't get a handle on it. There were times where I could get some relief working on it, but it always came back worse. I thought it was me. It is not you. OCD is terrible. It's a mental illness. It scratches your brain so deeply. It gives you so much anxiety that you cannot function as a normal human. So don't be ashamed if you're having a rough time. Anyone would have a rough time dealing with what you're dealing with. The final thing I wanted to address, because I remember feeling like things were never going to get better, and that is, will I ever be done with OCD? Will you ever be completely cured? Some people do find permanent relief, but most people who have OCD struggle with it for the rest of their lives to some extent. That doesn't mean that seeking help hasn't been completely worth it. I would say that a good majority of days, I'm doing so much better. Probably at least 50% of the time, I'm still struggling with some type of intrusive thought, but I know what my symptoms are and I know how to work through them so much better, so they don't give me as much anxiety as they used to, and I don't feel like I need to do outward compulsions as much as I used to, if at all. I still do struggle sometimes with the inward compulsions, the racing thoughts and things of that nature, but overall, my life is really improved, and I'm so grateful to the doctors and everyone that I've met along the way that has helped me through this journey. There are so many things that I'm going to get to do that I thought I'd never get to do because I made it to the end of my rope and decided to get some help. So yes, I will always have OCD symptoms, and you may as well, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't get help, because life can be significantly improved, significantly better, and where you are right now isn't the end of the road for you. I think that's everything I wanted to say, or everything I would have wanted to hear from someone when I was really sick. As I mentioned, I'll try and list some resources down below if you're feeling like you might want to get some support for your OCD or start working on your OCD. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Is there anything else, if you are on the other end of things where you've gotten help and some relief from your symptoms, what kind of things helped you to hear from other people? What worked for you? What do you think would work for other people? I know that everyone in the comments would find that really helpful. I hope that you have a great day, have a great weekend, and I will see you next time. Bye!